In the early 1960s, America was obsessed with speed. From the back roads to purpose-built drag strips, a new generation, young, restless, and car crazy, was redefining what performance meant. And at the center of that revolution stood a small, sky blue coupe, a 1933 Willys. Its driver was George Montgomery. The racing world would come to know him simply as Ohio George. In Dayton, Ohio, George Montgomery was more than a racer. He was a craftsman, a speed shop operator, and a relentless student of the rulebook. By the late 1950s, Montgomery had already found success with a baby blue 1934 Ford coupe. But George saw something others didn't. The compact Willys body, lighter, shorter, and overlooked, offered untapped potential on the drag strip. So George built a new car, not flashy, not radical, just smart. The Willys made its big league debut at the 1959 NHRA Nationals in Detroit, and in its very first major outing, it won Little Eliminator. Just like that, Ohio George had arrived. After Detroit, the Willys and its Ford garage mate were featured in Rod and Custom magazine. The photos revealed something special. Clean workmanship, meticulous engineering, no shortcuts. The racing world took notice. George Montgomery became Ohio George, and the Willys earned a nickname, the world's Wildest Willys. In 1960, Ohio George returned to Detroit with a radical new idea: traction through load transfer. Inspired by innovations like the Ram Charger's High and Mighty, the Willys now sat dramatically nose-high. At one point, the crankshaft center line was raised 24 inches off the ground, the maximum allowed by NHRA rules. Earlier experiments had been even more creative, including a 200-pound concrete spare tire. It worked. The Willys captured Little Eliminator again, defeating Doug Cookie Cook in the semis and running 11.59 seconds at 129.31 miles per hour in the final. Astonishing performance for a stock-bodied car. The prize? A brand new 1960 Ford Falcon Ranchero, which George would use as a support vehicle for years. A legend was officially underway. Under the hood, the Willys began with serious Cadillac power. A 59 Cadillac V8, bored and stroked from 390 to 432 cubic inches, fed by a GMC 671 supercharger and Hillborn fuel injection. Twin ignition coils, a roto-phase distributor, and construction standards so clean they became Ohio George's signature. Power went through a LaSalle 3-speed and a Ford Halliburton rear with torque tube drive. Later, a hydromotive-prepared GM Hydromatic took over. In this configuration, the Willys ran deep into the 10-second zone at over 130 miles per hour. Drag racing never stands still. In 1963, NHRA rule changes forced Ohio George to adapt. Out went the Cadillac, in came a small block Chevy. A 327 stroked to roughly 375 cubic inches, still blown and fuel injected. To make weight, the Willys shed steel for fiberglass, fenders, hood, grille, and even doors. Even with limited tire technology, the car continued to dominate. At the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis, Ohio George won his class and the Middle Eliminator title. The Willys wasn't just surviving, it was still leading. By the mid-1960s, blown gassers were escalating fast. Hemis, big block Chevys, bigger power everywhere. In 1966, Ohio George made his boldest move yet. A factory-backed deal with Ford drag racing boss Charlie Gray brought the legendary 427 SOHC Cammer into the Willys. The drivetrain was upgraded with an Art Car prepared 4C6 automatic, an Oldsmobile rear axle, and George's own uniquely engineered torque tube. Even the cooling system reflected George's ingenuity. a tall water tank positioned just close enough to qualify as a radiator under NHRA rules. In this ultimate form, the Willys won its class at the 1966 Nationals and the 1967 Winternationals. With a chopped roof to cut drag, the car eventually ran in the 8-second range at over 160 miles per hour. After 8 years, 3 drivetrans, and countless victories, the Willys had nothing left to prove. But at a Ford event in Dearborn, a simple comment changed everything. When George proudly recounted the Willys' wins, Ford executive Don Fry replied, "We sell Fords, don't we?" The message was clear. Ohio George returned to Dayton and began work on a new gasser, this time with a 1967 Mustang body. Another legend was born. Years later, the story of the Blue Willys wasn't finished. The car was located, returned to George's speed shop, now the oldest continuously operating speed shop in America, and meticulously restored. In 2005, the Henry Ford Museum recognized what it truly was, a cornerstone of drag racing history. Today, the Pioneer Gasser, the world's wildest Willys, rests on permanent display, not just as a race car, but as proof that ingenuity, craftsmanship, and vision can change a sport forever.